It is the 2026 RPT Convention. We're in Houston, Texas. I'm sitting down with our next Republican nominee for Texas Agriculture Commissioner, and that's a guy named Nate Sheets. You probably have seen him. He's taken the state by storm here, a barnstorm, if you will, to use an ag joke.
A bee storm.
A bee storm. Nate, it's great to have you. Is this your first convention? You've been to conventions before, or is this number one? Are you a rookie here? We want to know.
You know, I always felt like if I wanted to come to a convention, I needed to be a statewide politician first. So I've waited.
Yeah. Well, we're glad to have you now. If not now, when?
Yes.
And we're neighbors. You've got a beautiful booth here.
Thank you.
Obviously care about what's happening here because you've done a really great job.
The barn.
Making something attractive that draws people in. You've been out here taking pictures with people, listening to their concerns. I got to ask you, what are the biggest concerns facing agriculture right now? I feel like there's a lot. I was on the Legislative Priorities Committee. We heard a lot about agriculture and things that impact agriculture, but you have been running and talking about this for a very long time. Tell us a little bit about what we ought to see the Republican Party address in that world.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in agriculture. I mean, we've got the New World screwworm, which obviously we've got 7 cases now inside of Texas. I've been working with Secretary Rollins and the governor. I was at Kerrville at the USDA Center on Monday for an update meeting. I've been working with Don McLaughlin today and the Texas Emergency Center just to ensure that we have the resources out there to really continue to beat back the New World screwworm. And so I'm very excited about and very impressed, honestly, with the level of quality of leadership that we had there. Secretary Rollins is approaching this more like a business person than a politician. It builds a lot of confidence. We've got water issues in Texas, obviously. Land use for data centers is coming out of agriculture. I think a lot of people have a lot of fear and concern about agriculture, about data centers in Texas. And we've got my Democratic opponent is going around the state and kind of whipping people up, but starting to move the needle. I've had about 6 Republican chairs call me to tell me that they're very concerned because their hard R's in their counties are going to vote Democrat because it's a one issue. And so, those are just like the most pressing things right in front of us that I think are going to...
Those are all things happening this week, right?
Yeah.
Now, today.
In front of us. And thank you, Governor, for putting out a press release day before yesterday. Just, here are the boundaries, but the counties are being taken advantage of by the companies that are coming in doing data centers. And I'm very grateful that the Senate is going to look at putting some guardrails around there, but we got to act fast. But, at the end of the day, I think the biggest challenge that we have in agriculture is the loss of agriculture.
Right.
And if you think about
Tell us all about that. And how did we get here? What's happening? Why are we losing so many farms?
It's really about fiscal responsibility, the impact of fiscal investments. Private equity in America goes in their modus operandi. They buy a platform company, and then they start to buy up all the small companies and shut them down and roll them up into a real big company. And then they go sell that. And so that has happened in agriculture. And the result of that is we used to have, hundreds of seed companies. Now we have a couple. Hundreds of equipment companies. Now we have a couple. Hundreds of buyers. Now we have a couple. Hundreds of meat packing plants. Now we have 4. And that consolidation has relegated agriculture to purely be price takers. And because of that, we lose 68 farms every week in Texas. And farmers cannot afford to be in business anymore. They're losing real money year over year over year. And so that's on the agriculture side. And I would say the result of the food and the way we fed ourselves in America, which is also a fiscal issue, results in chronic disease. And
how so? Tell me about that.
Well, if you think about...
the Maha movement and people taking ownership over what they eat and what they feed and clothe their family with is a big deal. But what does the money have to do with that? How is money at the root of all this stuff?
So we have been in pursuit of cheap, inexpensive calories in America for decades. Ultra-processed food, foods ready to eat, foods on the go. And so in the pursuit of cheap calories, we have been paying a very expensive price with the quality of life the health of Americans. Now we have 70% of all Americans have one chronic disease or more.
Yeah.
78% of kids 18 to 25 cannot serve in the military because of their health, which is a national security issue.
Yeah.
And now we also spend $4 trillion a year in Medicare costs, $200 billion in Texas in Medicaid costs.
Yeah.
So in our pursuit of cheap calories, we're paying for it in a high cost and quality of life and in the back end in medical costs.
Right.
So if you think about how do we get ahead of it, think of it like a 401k that you invest when you're young and you're broke and you're thinking, I really use that money to pay for my rent or pay for my mortgage.
Right.
But when you're 45, 60, 70, and you're look back on that, you're really glad because of all the compounding effect of putting that money away.
Sure.
We don't think about our health and the way we feed ourselves. Yeah, it could cost more up front, but the impact on the backside is going to make our money back tenfold in real healthcare costs as well as longevity and higher quality of life. So it all comes down to money at the end of the day.
Yeah. I thought you were going to be making a bunch of like farm, barn, and ag jokes.
Oh, I've got
but now you're making a bunch of money analogies, you know? So the 401k analogy for how we deal with our food is really important. I appreciate that. Nate, tell us about the Office of Agriculture Commissioner. I feel like it's one of those issues or offices rather that most folks don't know about. So what are you about to do? What are you running to beat Democrats in order to control what part of government, and how does it operate? What does it do for the folks at home who maybe don't know?
Yeah, for all of you that are at home and you think, oh, this doesn't matter to me, I'm not in agriculture. My question is, did you eat food today? Because if you did, you interacted with the Texas Department of Agriculture more than any other state agency, and this agency matters.
Right.
But unfortunately, this agency has relegated it under the leadership in the past, being just a statutory regulatory agency.
Right.
And no one over the past 12 years, 10 years has had a vision, because they don't understand it, how to take the challenges we have in agriculture today to help farmers and ranchers be more profitable. And if you think about the food business, I mean, it's one thing to produce the food. Now you've got to get it somewhere. You've got to process it. You've got to get it packaged. You have to get it distributed. You have to get it to a grocery store, or get it to a 3PL that sells online.
Yeah. And
there's a massive amount of money that is spent from leaving the farm to being on the consumer's fork.
Right.
And so being in the honey business, if I sold a bottle of honey for $2, by the time it got to a consumer, it was $7. So that $5 that's in between is somewhat fungible if you can really start to connect consumers with local producers. And people want to know where their food is from and who made it and how it was made and what's on it and what's in it. And so what we're going to do at the Texas Department of Agriculture is we are going to shorten the distribution and sales cycle between consumers and producers. We have an affordability issue right now in grocery stores as it relates to food costs. So how do we get down food costs, but at the same time we're losing farmers because they're not profitable enough?
Right.
That $5. We start to bring them together. A producer can sell what he might have sold for $2 for $3, and the consumer what was going to have to spend for $7 can now get for $4.
Yeah.
So it's higher quality, better food, local food. We cut down on all the transportation costs, and we have Texans feeding Texans, Texans buying into local, rural communities that are helping to build Texas to be stronger.
Economics has a lot to do with ag.
Economics.
And so one of the things that we see is the relationship between United States farmers and ranchers in the beef industry competing with the beef industry of Australia, New Zealand, Brazil, all these other places. Where can we see, one, cheaper beef prices eventually, and two, more American beef on the table? Talk to us about that, because this is Texas. We're beef lovers. There's better beef in Texas than anywhere else in the world. And so how do we make sure that that's what's actually coming to our table?
I'll just start with the bigger issue of food transparency.
Yeah, sure.
That people, again, want to know where their food is from, who made it, how it was made. And there's a lot of shell games that go on in food at times. And so companies don't really want to be transparent. And so if you think about the beef industry, we used to have mandatory country of origin labeling. In the honey industry in America, the FDA and USDA require honey companies to have country of origin. So if I had honey from Argentina, Brazil, Uruguay, and the USA, it's going to say it on the label.
Right.
And
as a customer of your products, I know that.
In the meat world, that's not true anymore. We had it up until 2015, 2016. It was called mandatory country of origin labeling, McCool. But the World Trade Organization came and petitioned the United States Congress and said that the McCool put foreign competitors at a disadvantage to U.S. producers.
Yeah.
And they got rid of the McCool Act.
Okay.
And so, which is just, as a U.S. producer, it's insane.
Yeah.
And so I think there is some level of resistance to that because of the manufacturing process as it relates to large meat packing facilities. And if you're processing 8,000 cows a day and you don't really know where that cow came from, if it came from Florida or Texas, Mexico, it's like, well, we can't do that. And so there are challenges that we would have to work around, but there's a volunteer country of origin labeling that if I'm a U.S. producer, I'm going to make sure really big and clear on my packaging that people know that is Texas beef from West Texas and Nate Sheets Honey Rock Ranch out in Guthrie, Texas, because I'm a marketer. And so it's, I just think one of the things I really want to do as an ag commissioner is help kind of be the chief marketing officer for all the farms and ranches to help them think through how do we become more successful in selling our products to consumers. So it's not just I'm going to be your chief logistics and distribution officer and help cut down the distribution, but I want to help you be more successful and help sell more product to more people for more money and then not just survive, but thrive.
That's great. One of the things that candidates for office at every level of government have all started to include in their platforms, right, is this idea of doging or rooting out waste, fraud, abuse. What kinds of things are you excited to, participate in as the ag commissioner of the state of Texas in regard to doging, to looking for opportunities to root out waste, fraud, and abuse?
I think the current...
I know every part of government does the very best it can with the very little it has. But the truth is government has grown and grown and grown. And so I think most people think there's got to be some way to cut and give maybe people more property tax relief. And so what comes to mind when you think of the Texas Agriculture Commission and taking the reins of it?
I think the current ag commissioner has done a pretty good job doging agriculture.
Yeah.
And even the TDA, because the legislature didn't want to entrust, resources to them. And so they continued to doge it for
you. Might have less places to look than other places.
And candidly, we need to look at, now, again, I'm an entrepreneur. And so I look at what a finance guy looks at as an expense, and I look at it as an investment.
Sure.
Because how can we take that money, go put it into something that's going to result in a GDP growth or job growth or savings and healthcare costs? And so I think it's just taking a measured approach and trying to apply an ROI perspective, even in government, you know? And so if you are a regulator that regulates the citrus industry, you need to realize that there is an impact that should have a positive result for both citrus, health of consumers, and the state. And so I think it's, the vision of recognizing the stewardship responsibility of the monies entrusted, and then coming up with plans that result in having positive benefits. But that's a cultural issue that we're going to have to really work on inside of TDA.
Right.
But I think that if we can do it properly, and because we need more resources to be able to invest into programs that ultimately are going to have a positive impact on both GDP, but the areas where we can make cuts are things like deregulating, making it easier for people to be in business. I was just talking to some families that have been in fourth generation aqua farming and wild caught seafood, and they were in a fish processing house down in Galveston last week, and she looked up, and there were 17 certificates on the wall that was required from 17 different agencies.
Wow.
for them to be
Most
able
folks
to
at
run
home
that.
can't even name 17 government agencies.
That's insane. I was down with the oyster culture, aquaculture. I was out at oyster farm. They said that they had to go to TCEQ to get a discharge permit to have an oyster farm, which is a little bit insane because oysters actually clean the water. They're not discharging into the water. And then they had to go
sorry for emitting clean water, I guess.
Yeah. And then they had to go to Texas Parks and Wildlife. And then they had to go to this group. And then they had to go to this group. And we almost make it impossible to want to be an entrepreneur and to be in agriculture. And so let's think like a business person. How do we allow speed to market? And since we're dealing with consumer health, ensure that we have health standards and safety standards to make sure the food that we're putting on people's tables is the healthiest, safest, most nutritious food that we can.
Yeah. So as a candidate, you didn't stray away from talking about your faith. I thought that was really interesting and neat and kind of a contrast from a lot of other politicians that maybe talk about it from an arm's length distance. But you told it on a more personal level. Why is that? Talk to us about it now. And what's it been like as a candidate on the campaign trail for the last year?
I spent 12 years in full-time Christian ministry, traveling to 88 countries around the world, telling people about Jesus.
Yeah.
I left ministry, went into full-time business, and I still had that same desire to want to make an impact for God's kingdom.
Yeah.
And so I just did business differently, and so really wanted to reach people for Christ. And so we just did things differently in Nature Nates. And so now that I'm not at Nature Nates, I'm going into the public life, I still want to make that same impact for God's kingdom. You know, and so Jesus told us, while you are going, make disciples. Well, I was going, being a missionary, I was going in the honey business. I'll be going as the ag commissioner. And so we can make a difference for eternity, whatever it is that we're doing. And one of the reasons, honestly, why I do it, it helps to create accountability for myself. And if I'm vocal about it, which at the same time puts a spiritual target on your back.
Sure.
Satan says he's there to lie, kill, and destroy. And there's nothing better than when he sees a pastor fall or a missionary fall or a politician fall when they are vocal about their faith. And so as a brother in Christ, I expect and hope you will hold me accountable if you see me doing things. And that's one of the reasons why I do want to be vocal. But the main reason, because I cannot help us be successful in agriculture. I can't make it rain. I cannot make your crops abundant. I can't make your animals have lots of babies. I can't do any of that. But
tell
God
that
can.
to the globalists, Nate, you know?
But God can. And
that's right.
When George Washington swore in as the first president of the United States, he opened the Bible, Deuteronomy 28, put his hand on there. And that was a symbolic statement of, I believe what he was saying was, I can't do all these things that are promised in there. What the promises are, if you will seek me and keep my commandments, I will send the sun and the rain. Your animals will have lots of babies. Your crops will be abundant. You'll be the head and not the tail, the lender and not the borrower, and even your enemies will be at peace with you. And all of those come from a direct promise of seeking after God and keeping his commandments.
That's right.
And so when George Washington was swearing in as president of the United States, I think he was saying, I have no idea how to be a president. It wasn't exactly a job description. You're number one.
Yeah.
But I think he was saying it, but the one thing I can do is lead us to do this, and then I do know that I can have the faith and belief and trust that God will do that. So when I swear in, Lord willing, as the ag commissioner, we're going to have it on Deuteronomy 28, because I can't do any of those things, but if you can help me seek after God and keep his commandment, and I help you, then the blessings of heaven that we come upon Texas and America will be immense. And I really genuinely believe that with all of my heart, and I've seen it time and time again. God and money has probably had more interaction. I could talk to you for an hour about amazing ways of things God did in providing money. And one of my favorite, I will divert just a little bit just because it's great, Moses and leading the people out of Israel. God told Moses 3 times, tell the Egyptians to give them all of your gold necklaces and earrings.
Yeah.
The slaves who've been in slavery for 400 years. So it says that they adorned the Israeli children with the crowns and jewels of the Egyptians, walking across the desert with their clothes on.
Yeah.
What a sight. But then God's got Moses up on Mount Sinai. He's telling them, hey, I want you to build the tabernacle, the ephod, the lampstand, the table, the ark. And this is how I want you to do it. It's Exodus 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. And God's telling me I want you to make all this stuff out of solid gold. Well, where did they get the gold? He just had them walk out of Egypt with it.
That's right.
And so God provided the money, but I always have this image of Moses drooping down his head as he's adding all these things onto him. But then he says, Exodus 28, but don't worry, I've already sent Bezalel and Holiab, the son of Ahisamach, and I put all the creativity and craftsmanship in their heart to accomplish what I've called you to. I've given them the ability to carve wood and weave with threads and to pound out metals. So God provided for Moses. When God had called him to that incredible vision, he provided the money, and he provided the people with the skills.
Yeah.
And that is the one lesson that I have turned around and seen throughout my entire professional life. When it's Nathan's ideas, it winds up in a box on top of the closet. When it's God's ideas, man, it is like a big skin on the wall that says, God did this.
Yeah.
And I do believe that I look at where people are coming at us now and what we're doing. I see God sending Bezalels and Aholiabs, and I think he's going to bring them the resources that we need, and he's going to send the sun and the rain, and our crops are going to be abundant, and our animals are going to have lots of babies.
Yeah. If the Lord wills it, it's going to be great. We're here with Nate Sheets. He's our Republican nominee for Agriculture Commissioner in Texas. We're at the 2026 Republican Party of Texas Convention. Nate, maybe a parting word for our delegates or the folks watching at home.
Yeah, listen, we got to get through November. And so go to natesheets.com. We're going to be barnstorming the state. Where I spoke with the speaker earlier. I said, hey, any areas where we have anybody at risk, we're going to come in and we might come alongside and encourage and be helpful. But we cannot be asleep at the wheel. I mean, the Democrats are coming after us. They would love to turn Texas, and it's going to take all of us. And for all of you believers out there that have not voted because your church tells you not to get involved, aren't you tired of fighting decisions that are made in the public life in the church because the church isn't there? So get out and go vote, go register, and go to natesheets.com, and I'd appreciate your vote.
Nate Sheets, Republican nominee for Ag Commissioner. We'll have more interviews just like this one coming up real soon. So tune in.